I'll show you how to use the zoom blur filter and utilize some blending techniques to gain finer control over the end result. So here is my light painting composite image, and this type of imagery works really well with the zoom blur filter. Now before we do anything else, I'm going to move across to the layers panel and just make sure I have the correct layer selected. So as you can see here, I've already done some work on this image, and I've currently got the white balance adjustment layer selected. Now if I apply the filter to this layer, it's not going to do anything. What I need to do is make sure I have the background pixel layer selected, because this is my image content. Okay, so with the correct layer selected, we can go to Filters, Blur, and choose the Zoom Blur filter. Now the way this filter works is very straightforward. We simply drag the radius slider up to increase the amount of blur, and then we click drag on the canvas to determine the origin point of the blur. So actually an easier way to achieve this is to reduce the radius to 0 so we can see the original image, then click drag to set our origin point, which for me is going to be here, then drag the radius up. Okay, so once we're happy with the effect, we simply just click apply to commit that zoom blur filter. Now, that's all well and good, but it doesn't leave us with a lot of control over the final result. So what I'm going to do instead is explore some blending options. I'm going to undo that zoom blur effect, and I'll duplicate the background pixel layer. So there are a few ways to do this. You could right click and choose duplicate. Alternatively, you could use the keyboard shortcut. So on Mac, that is Command J. On Windows, that will be Control J. And we're going to apply the zoom blur to this duplicated background pixel layer. So again, I'll drag radius to 0, click drag to set the origin point down here, then drag the radius up. Once again, click apply. So because we've duplicated the pixel layer and applied the zoom blur to the duplicated version, that means we can now explore some blending options. So for the duplicated pixel layer, we could change the blend mode. For example, we could use a blend mode like screen and perhaps just reduce the opacity like so. But also, what I think is far more effective is taking advantage of blend ranges. So we'll set the blend mode back to normal, then we'll access blend ranges from this cog icon here. So what we'll do now is on source layer ranges, we'll grab the left-hand node and drag it all the way down. So the way this graph works is that to the left, you have absolute black, and to the right, you have absolute white. And what we've done effectively here is we've blended this zoom blur pixel layer out of the darker tones. And gradually, as we move to the midtones and the highlights, we're blending it back in. So let's just zoom in and I'll show you the effect here on these areas, which are darker than the brighter light streaks. So as I move this up, notice that we blend in more of the zoom blur pixel layer, and as I move it down, we reveal more of the original background from the untouched layer beneath. Okay, and we can click drag to add more nodes on this graph. We can even uncheck linear to have a non-linear graph, which gives us a smoother transition. And here you can see that we can just bring through the zoom blur detail in the highlights, but keep the background detail intact. And that just gives us finer control over the blending for this zoom blur effect. So there we go, a quick look at the zoom blur filter and some advanced blending techniques.